Okay, this is the next in our series of review videos coming up to the second exam. And this one's going to be all about files. Okay, so I think a lot of you were a little bit confused about files. So I want to make sure that we're a little bit clear. Okay, so all of the Python programs that we create are going to be text files, plain text files. Remember that Python will deal with binary files. We're just not in this class. Okay, and the book doesn't. In the same way, Python can deal with random access to a file, but we're not. We're always assuming we start at the beginning and go through in a sequential fashion. Okay, so files are pretty straightforward, I think, in that we can open files that are on our system. For all of our examples, we're assuming that we store the text file in exactly the same directory that we store the program in. Okay, we don't have to, but we're just gonna make it easier on ourselves. Okay. And it always starts with this idea of a file handler or a file object. And it's going to be a variable we use in Python that ties us into the file system of the host operating system and gets to a file we can do something with. Okay. So we typically are going to use the words in file and out file, but we can use whatever we want. Okay. In file is what we're going to use to write or to read from a file. Out file, we're going to write to a file. Okay. So let's start with writing to a file. So we'll have something to write. So out file equals, we're always going to open no matter what. Okay. The open is going to have some name. We'll call this test data.txt. Okay. And I want to open this to write. With write, I have two options. The W option is going to open it up and wipe out whatever's there, which is what I want now. But if I want to continue to add information to an existing file, I would open that up in append mode or A. Okay. So once I have done that, okay, then I can go through and do whatever I'm going to do with my file. Okay. So let's say I have name is equal to Bob, and I have ID is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Let's say I want to write this to the file. I'm going to write it with a new line character. Okay. So I would do an out file dot write. Okay. And I would start with name plus a new line character. Okay. Then I would do for the next line, I would do an out file dot write. Okay. I have to convert that number into a string. Okay. Plus a new line character. Okay. And then you always want to make sure that you close the file. So I have to do an out file dot close. Okay. And here, while we're here, we can go ahead and do the same thing. Okay. So I can do here an in file is equal to open, same name, test data.txt. Open it for read mode. Okay. And then the way we typically do this is through a loop. So we're going to start by saying line is equal to in file dot read line. Okay. And then while line is not equal to nothing or two quotes together, okay, I'm going to print that line, and then I'm going to get the next line. Okay. And then do my in file dot close. That should be the basics of going through the files. Let me run this one and see what we get. Okay, it prints out our file. Okay, in fact, if I would do a file open and then change it to all files, I don't want to do all files here. It's so weird. I had that problem. It's just on this computer. I'm not sure why. Not sure what I'm doing there. But it showed up anyway. There we go. Anyway, that's our file. There's Bob. There's a new line character and so forth. Okay. Remember, of course, when we get the info from the file. Okay, so we've got the line here. Okay, we have to make sure that we would do something like line is equal to line.r strip. Strip out that new line character. Okay, and then of course, if we're treating it as a number, we would have to go through and convert it using the int or the float into a number. Okay. So that's the basics of writing a file. Okay. The other part of this chapter basically is going to talk about the exceptions. So let's talk about some exceptions here. What I usually like to do with a file is go through a program and get it working, get the program totally working. Okay. Run it one more time, make sure it's doing what we want. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so now I want to worry about the exceptions that could happen. Okay, so I like to highlight the whole thing, hit the tab key, and then add the try block. Okay, and then I think about where can things go wrong. Okay, and in this case, where things can go wrong, it can be an except, an IO error. Okay, and then we can print something, file not found or is unreadable for whatever reason. Okay. So to see if this is working, we can go ahead and make this second part be wrong. Okay, so if I run this, you see that I get the exact same error message I typed here appears here. I don't get all the red stuff. Okay, so that takes care of that. If our program did other things, okay, other things we have to worry about. So we normally see something like, let's actually change this to all numbers. And I know this is going to be weird, but to avoid, so whatever, and we're going to write those two. So this time, when it comes through, let's say we're going to convert it. So I'm going to say line is equal to int line. Okay. So when I do that, and let's make it fail, because the other way to figure out that you've got something wrong is to force that error, and you'll know what the error name is. Okay, so if I run this, yeah, it's going to give me this value error here. Okay, when it tries to do this, okay, you see it tells it it's at line 19, which is right here. Okay, so I can again, or I now have to worry about the except value error. Okay, print file contains non-numeric data, let's say. That would work. Okay, so we're taking care of that issue. So the IO error is one that we see a lot. The value error is one that we see a lot. You can have just an except, okay, which means something happens, you don't know what it is, you have to define it there in some way. Remember, there's also an else. An else happens if there were no errors, no exceptions were hit. You don't always need it, but sometimes you do. And there's also a finally, which happens no matter what, if there were exceptions or not. Okay. The other one that we sometimes get is the division by zero error. Okay, so you can certainly, and again, you can force this one just by, I'd have to go back and fix this. And then down here, I could just say, line divided by zero should cause there to be a zero division error. No, what doesn't it like? I'm not sure what line. Oh, this is, yeah, that doesn't work there because at that point, the line is a string because it hasn't converted it on the last time. Okay, so let me cut that, put it here. Now. Still doesn't like that. What doesn't it like? In line 9. What doesn't it like? Oh, I can't. Yeah. I have to write. The file has to write that. That's what my issue was there. Now I get the zero division error. Okay, which is what I was expecting. Okay, so that's how files work. Basically, that's how the exceptions work. Okay, and how you go back and add them in. One thing I will say, if they're, and let's just go ahead and do another example. Okay, So let's say you have a function called trouble, takes some variable, okay? It then does an x divided by 0, okay, which can't happen, okay? You want to put your try block up in main, okay? So if there's an error, you want to capture it in main because it will flow back through. When it gets that error, it's going to stop your function and come back to here rather than having your except in 1,000 different areas, okay? Okay, so if I run this one, you see that it's going to catch that, okay? So I see a lot of you in your homework have multiple try except blocks in each of your functions, and you don't need to worry about that. So whatever function there can be in, or whatever exception there can be in the function, it will flow back through to main, and that's a better place to put it, okay? Okay, so that's an overview of files and exceptions. And again, if you have any questions about that, make sure that you let me know.